I was going to start by saying what Annie Laurie was saying. It was quite important about Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was not secular. Nazi Germany, one of the first things that Hitler did when he came to power was sign a concordat with the Roman Catholic Church. The Vatican that has a list of what they call the delicta graviora, which is the most serious crimes of all in the eyes of the Catholic Church. They're the crimes that can only be judged directly by the Vatican. They include crimes against the Eucharist, crimes against the holiness of confession, and in 2010 they added to these really serious crimes the crime of paedophilia committed by priests. And the context was not that these other things were as bad as paedophilia, it was that paedophilia was as bad as offending the sacraments. That was the context in which they saw it. And then in 2010 they added a fourth crime to this kind of strange list of the most serious crimes of all, and that was attempting to ordain a woman as a priest. And attempting to ordain a woman as a priest in the eyes of the Roman Catholic Church has a stricter penalty than clerical paedophilia. You're automatically excommunicated if you try to ordain a woman as a priest, but not if you rape a child. This organisation, with its warped set of ethics, that is one of the most deeply misogynistic religions, along with Islam, in the world, has such an effect around the world on not only civic society but on state laws and the intermingling of the two, that their influence in Ireland, for example, has left us in a situation where it is considered controversial for our Parliament to discuss passing a law to enable a doctor to save the life of a dying woman in a hospital. It is absolutely outrageous that this, what should be the absolute minimum rock bottom ethical standard that we should expect from any civic society, that we just expect from any set of parliamentarians, is considered so controversial that there are demonstrations in the street and politicians being abused for taking that absolute minimum level. We need obviously to go way beyond that, but it's outrageous that we even have to be discussing that in 2013. The Vatican not only affects policies in Ireland, but it affects policies around the world. And one of the ways that it affects policies around the world is through its pretend state in the which they call the Holy See in the Vatican. It's essentially a theme park dressed up as a state. It has none of the attributes that a state has. It doesn't have a population, it doesn't have any proper economy. Most of its public services are provided by Rome. It's not a state, and yet it has managed to convince the world that it is a state, inveigling its way into the United Nations, first of all, and I kid you not, first of all on the basis that because they issued their own stamps, they started to get invited to the International Union of Postal Industries. And through meetings of that, they gradually managed to get themselves then, because they had their own radio station, they got involved in the telecommunications meetings at that international level, and somehow managed to get themselves this status of special observer status at the United Nations, where they have all of the power that an actual state has, apart from the right to vote at the central sessions, but that doesn't really matter because the United Nations tends to try to do things by consensus. And so that gives them an opportunity to in practical terms, to block progress, particularly on issues to do with reproductive rights, to do with gay rights, to do with anything that they want essentially to slow down progress on. They can slow it down to a snail's pace, they can delay it until such time as it's almost impossible for things to pass. And they do it quite regularly, in cooperation with the Organisation of the Islamic States. There's that strange alliance at the United Nations that they have extremely different views of what they think the creator of the universe is telling them, but they're united on the issue that they should both support laws or oppose measures at the United Nations that would increase the rights of women or gay people. It's almost unanimously when these things happen, you will see them behave in that manner. They exchange ambassadors with real states. Ireland, thankfully, recently has not removed its ambassador, but has closed down the embassy in the Vatican, which again isn't even in the Vatican. It's outside the Vatican in Rome, like most of the things that they own. But that's a step in the right direction. It's only a very small symbolic step. It's very important that we break all relations at state level. So if citizens want to believe whatever they want to believe, that's fine. And if they think that the creator of the universe is telling them to live their lives in a certain way, that's fine. But if they think that the creator of the universe is telling them to tell us to live our lives in ways that they believe, well then that's not on, we've got to stand up to it. And in terms of the influence that they still have, both nationally and internationally, the Vatican is, along with the Islamic states, is the most important target for advancing secularism. The Islamic states are, in a way, they're more overt. I just want to tell you something about it in terms of there's a United Nations Convention that 187 countries have signed called the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and it's a pretty impressive document, and it outlines a range of definitions of what discrimination against women is and how it needs to be tackled in various areas. And United Nations conventions like that, when states sign up to them, they're entitled to make reservations to some of the clauses. If there's a reservation that they think will conflict with our constitution or something, they can make it. It's kind of like, those of you who are in Ireland remember some years ago the Maastricht referendum, when the Fianna Fáil government was concerned that this might bring abortion into Ireland, and they came up with this addendum to it that they said would be added to the treaty and would protect Ireland from abortion. I remember a great line from Michael Nugent, who said that the idea of the Fianna Fáil parliamentary party trying to examine the constitutional impact of the protocol to the Maastricht referendum on the possibility of abortion influencing the constitutional situation in Ireland, he said, conjured up images of a chimpanzee with a screwdriver at the back of a television set. And unfortunately, that's the type of oversight that we have on these type of issues. But if you look at the reservations that the Islamic states make to the Convention on Discrimination, to outlaw discrimination against women, the reservations, like they're very explicit reservations. They're such Kingdom of Bahrain makes reservations with respect to Article 2, which is the main article that outlaws most discrimination, in order to ensure its implementation within the bounds of the provisions of the Islamic Sharia. The Arab Republic of Egypt is willing to comply with the content of this article, provided that such compliance does not run counter to the Islamic Sharia. Article 2 from Libya shall be implemented with due regard for the peremptory norms of the Islamic Sharia. They're all very, very explicit about that. They will accept, effectively they're not accepting it. A reservation that just renders the convention irrelevant is not making a reservation, it's just rejecting it. And I don't think that the United Nations should allow them to make reservations that in effect negate the purpose of the convention. So I think those two issues, I think Islamic States and the Vatican at the United Nations are the two organisations that we really need to stay alert to what they're doing, campaign against what they're doing, make sure that people are aware that they have this power and that they're using it. And I just want to end with just one brief anecdote that indicates just one of the fortunate slight advantages sometimes of the mad laws that result from the influence of the Catholic Church on the laws in Ireland. You'll remember some years ago, before the X case, that based on the 1983 pro-life amendment, it was deemed unconstitutional to give information to anybody through which they could get an abortion. As part of that, you weren't allowed to get information about the contact details of abortion clinics abroad in case you'd use them to go and get an abortion. And there was situations where magazines coming into Eason's where they would tear out adverts for abortion clinics before they would sell the magazines. It was absolutely bizarre. And around that time, I was on one of my occasional forays into Veritas, which is the Catholic Bishop's bookstore in Abbey Street, where you can get, you know, hilarious books on the autobiography of the Vatican's exorcist and things like that. But as well as that, you get kind of some serious books. And one of the books that was there was by a guy called Joe Scheidler, who's still active, and his son is still active in the American anti-choice movement. And they're still pumping money into Ireland to campaign to prevent abortion from being legalised in Ireland. And this was a disgusting book. It was called Closed, 99 Ways to Stop Abortion, and it was a handbook for anti-choice activists as to how to close down abortion clinics, essentially. It was how to disrupt the work of abortion clinics. It had chapter headings like use inflammatory language like abortuary and Holocaust. It had chapter headings like warn the garbage man, you're holding corpses. This was on sale in Veritas bookshop owned by the Roman Catholic hierarchy. And in one of the chapters it had a section on how to disrupt the work of abortion clinics by finding out what they were doing. And how you found out what they're doing is you get on their mailing lists and then you know what they're doing. And in order to get on their mailing lists, they included a list of names and addresses of abortion clinics and abortion advocacy groups in America. So I sent a copy of that to the guards and the DPP and said that the Catholic Church are selling a book that contains contact details for abortion clinics, which is unconstitutional, and I got the book removed from Veritas. So sometimes, just in a very small way, sometimes it's handy to have those silly laws. Thank you very much.